Members wish to debate is the New Zealand Teachers Council, and the question is that the report of the Education and Science Committee on the 2012-13 financial review of the New Zealand Teachers Council be noted. I call Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, there aren't many examples or clearer examples of the mismanagement of the education portfolio than the way the current government are handling issues around the New Zealand Teachers Council. Those following along at home, and I'm sure there are many people avidly following this debate at home and reading along with the volumes of the reports, will note that in fact there's only a relatively short, somewhat pro forma report on the New Zealand Teachers Council in this particular volume of reviews, and that is because the Education and Science Select Committee are currently dealing with major legislative change relating to the Teachers Council, and so it was decided not to do a more comprehensive report back to the House on the current state of the Teachers Council. However, there are significant issues at least in part because while on the one hand the government talk about wanting to raise the status of the teaching profession, on the other hand they have proposed legislative change to the New Zealand Teachers Council that will completely remove all teacher representation from the governing body of that organisation. So on the one hand they say we want teaching to be a high trust profession and we want the best and brightest going into teaching, but then on the other hand they say but we don't trust them to actually make any decisions about their own profession. Now I think that's somewhat ironic coming from this national government, because this national government seems to have a higher view of real estate agents than it does of the New Zealand teaching workforce. So for example, we have the debate on regulating real estate agents in the House, where we got quotes from the national government along the lines of we trusted the lawyers to come up with suggestions that would make their industry more user-friendly. I suggest that the rational, calm approach adopted in that instance would have been a good model to use in this instance. Those were comments that they made in defence of real estate agents. So they thought that real estate agents should be trusted to regulate their own affairs, but aren't willing to offer the teaching profession that same degree of trust and support. I thought, actually, there was a comment by Simon Power which I thought was very interesting when it came to real estate agents, which he says, we are not in favour, and of course the royal we he's talking about is the National Party, we are not in favour of the vilification of an entire industry off the back of some scattered examples. Well, the same thing can apply to the teaching profession. So often when we talk about the Teachers Council and the very difficult job they deal with, the entire teaching profession get marred by a few bad apples, a few bad examples. And actually, by and large, the teaching profession in New Zealand are absolutely top-notch. They're trustworthy, dependable, and we should place a very high value on them. It was going to be very interesting to see how this legislation progresses, because, of course, the critical vote in this legislation may well be the vote of the Honourable Peter Dunn. Now, Peter Dunn made some comments on the real estate agents, and he said, he was talking about, in this instance, the bill effectively nationalises the real estate industry, because it says we do not trust you to regulate your affairs and the conduct of your members in a way that is appropriate. We will therefore put in place a statutory environment that you will not have control over, but that will be independent. That is a double-edged word at the best of times, so that we can ensure allegedly a standard of public performance. That was Peter Dunn talking about real estate agents in defence of the real estate industry and their ability to have a say in the regulation of their own profession. I'm going to be very interested in seeing where Peter Dunn lands up on the legislation relating to the Teachers Council, because the Teachers Council legislation that the current government have proposed does the same thing to the teaching profession that Peter Dunn opposed to being done to the real estate agents industry. So if he adopts that same position, and I hope he does, I look forward to him opposing that legislation along with the Labour Party and I'm sure the other opposition parties in the House, because we do believe that teaching should be a high trust profession. It should be one of the most respected professions in the country. We want the best and brightest to go into teaching, and that means we should have some trust in them to regulate their own industry, their own profession, and that is what is not going to happen if the legislative changes that are proposed to the Teachers Council are enacted when that bill is reported back to the House. It will take away from the teaching profession the ability to appoint their own governing body. What's more, it doesn't even guarantee on the current drafting of the legislation that there'll be any teachers on the body of the new Teachers' Council, which is being called Educouncil, or the Education Council of Aotearoa, New Zealand. No guarantee whatsoever that in fact teachers will have any control over that body. I don't think that's right. I think that when the time comes, we should put a great degree of trust in teachers. We should recognise that teachers are the best people to be making the decisions about the regulation of their profession, and we should trust in them to run their own profession.
Call Dr. Cam Calder.
Mr. Chairman, it's a great pleasure to take a call on the Teachers' Council.